Guys, what's going on? Moving on with our quadratic equations, I'm going to show you one final method on how to solve them. We talked about solving by factoring. We talked about solving by taking square roots, solving by completing the square so we could set it up to take the square roots, and then now solving by using what's called the quadratic formula. Learning objective today, I could solve quadratic equations by using the quadratic formula. Guys, this big equation here, this is our quadratic formula. Our solutions, our intercepts, our roots, our zeros, our values, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a, where all these values come from the coefficients in our quadratic trinomial. The a value goes with the x squared. The b value is the value with the x's. And the c value, which only shows up once in our formula, but we still need to use, is the constant from our equation. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Looks complicated, right? The nice thing about the quadratic formula is that you could just take those values, plug it in, simplify, and you've got your answers. Instead of doing all those other steps like the other methods, plug it in, simplify, there's your solutions. Now, there's a couple of things with this quadratic formula. First off, I want to talk about the discriminant. The discriminant is the stuff inside the square root inside of our quadratic formula. So this b squared minus 4ac. This is a very crucial piece of the quadratic formula because it tells you what kind of solutions you can have. If it's positive, you're going to have two solutions. If it's negative, you're going to have zero real solutions. And then if it's zero, you get one solution. So if it's positive, you get two solutions. If it's zero, you get one solution. And then if it's negative, you get zero real solutions. Now, with what we're going to deal with, we're going to stay inside the positive and zero world. We're going to stay with the real solutions here. But it's important to know that you can get non-real solutions, which would end up as zero real solutions for us. So that discriminant is what we're going to start with. And when you go to your Delta Math assignment, your first 5 problems are going to be asking about the discriminant. So let's look at this example here and let's work on this one. We have, what's the discriminant of the quadratic equation? I have 6x squared plus x minus 8 equals 0. 6x squared plus 8 plus x minus 8 equals 0. So we want to use that discriminant function. We want to use b squared minus 4ac. And we want to just plug in our values and then simplify. So let's get our values. If I'm going through, let's make this our a value. Let's make the green our b value. And then let's make c our yellow value, just like before. And now we can plug this stuff in. B goes with this one, which is that invisible 1 exponent. So I'm going to plug a 1 in for b. Now notice the parentheses squared, the times negative 4, that always stays the same. That doesn't change. The only thing that's going to change is our a, b, and c value. B, we said, was that invisible 1. A is that positive 6 with the 6x squared. And then C turns out to be negative 8. So let's simplify here. Dealing with the exponent, I have 1 squared, which is 1. Negative 4 times 6 times negative 8. Oh, geez. That's negative 24 times negative 8. That's something I don't want to do in my head. I get 192. So plus 192, which then I could add together and gets me a final answer of 193. So I'm looking at this solution here. Discriminant. The one piece of our quadratic formula tells us how many solutions we have in our quadratic formula. You just take your numbers, plug it in. It's a nice little warm-up to the quadratic formula because it's a piece of it, but you have a little more to do with quad formula. Notice, if we go back to our notes, this is positive 193. So if it was a positive discriminant, that tells us we would have ended up with 2 solutions. Okay, let's get to the quad formula stuff. Going back to our quad formula, look at this problem here. Let's work through this guy right here. So, let me copy and paste real quick. Okay, so let's work with this one here. We've got negative d squared minus 12d plus 4 equals negative 6d squared. So taking that and working on it on our Jamboard so you can see it all. Let's get this thing solved out. First off, we got to get that 0 on one side. So let's do the opposite here. Let's add the 6d squared. And let's add it to the like term. So not to the constant, not to the d by itself, but to the other d squared. So I get negative 1d squared plus 6d squared, which becomes 5d squared minus 12d plus 4 is equal to 0. Now that I have this equal to 0, I could start looking at what our a values are, what our b value is, and what our c value is. And it looks like I forgot my variable there. Whoops. There we go. And now that I have this, I can plug it into my quadratic formula. We want negative b plus or minus the square root of our discriminant, which is that b squared minus 4 times a times c. And it's all divided by 2a. So let's plug in our values. Our a values was a 5, goes here, goes on the bottom. Our b value is that negative 12, so let's plug in negative 12, negative 12. And then our last missing is our one and only constant, which turns out to be a plus 4. Okay, let's simplify a little bit. Looking at this one, I have a negative 12, which just becomes positive, right? That's kind of nice when they cancel out like that. Inside my square root, I have negative 12 squared, which is 144, right? Negative times negative makes positive. Then I have negative 4 times 5 times negative 4. So negative 4 times 5 times 4 equals negative 80. So we're going to go minus 80. And that's everything on top. Let's look at what we have on the bottom. Just 2 times 5, which makes 10. Okay. So now let's take this and let's simplify a little more here. I've got 144 minus 80 inside my square root, which gets me 64. So I have 12 plus or minus square root of 64, all divided by that 10 we saw from before. Okay, now what's the nice thing about square root of 64? It could be broken down. 8 times 8 gets you 64. So really, this just becomes 12 plus or minus 8, all divided by 10. Now remember, this splits up into 2 Answers. We have the positive case, so 12 plus 8 divided by 10. And then we have the negative case, 12 minus 8 divided by 10. Add, subtract, and then divide. So 12 plus 8 makes 20. Sorry, that's a funky looking 20 there. And then 20 over 10, oh, that's nice. Because that reduces real clean. 20 divided by 10 just becomes 2. So one of our answers is 2. 12 minus 8 becomes 4. Oh, that one won't be as clean, but that's okay. Because we could reduce this one. 4 over 10 are both even numbers. So let's divide top and bottom by 2. 2 goes into 4 twice. 2 goes into 10 5 times. There's my 2 answers. So I have 2 and 2/5. Do you see what I mean about this quadratic formula, guys? Like once you know what the formula is and you just plug it in, you just simplify and you go from there. So as far as steps go, it's easier to explain. Plug them in, simplify, 2 answers. The simplifying piece, sometimes we have a little trouble with it. But if you just take your time, look for double negatives, square it out, multiply it out, combine your stuff, see if you can take the square root. Sometimes people like this method the best because it tells you exactly what the 2 solutions are. And all you have to remember is just plug it in. 2 and 2/5. 2 and 2/5. Whoa, not 13. Let me see if I can get all of this on one page. There we go. There it is, guys. Quadratic formula. If you need anything, let me know. We'll talk it up.